Hello, everybody. My name is Shakira Refos, and I'm the Education Outreach Manager at the California Film Institute. You just got finished watching Subjects of Desire. The first time I saw this film was at South by Southwest, and it's such an honor to have with us Director Jen Holness. Thank you for joining us today.
Hey, good afternoon or morning. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have so many questions. We only have about 20 minutes, so I want to make sure that I get to the really important ones. I want to start with the first scene, just the first moment when the film opens. A young lady talks about speaking proudly in her truth and how happy she is to be Black. Can you share with us? I mean, it made me smile, which is a great way to open a film. Can you share with us a little bit of why you chose that particular scene to start with?
So that was Soraya Nicole, and she says, I love being Black. And she laughs, and it's just joyous. And, I wanted to make a film about Black women in beauty. And I actually wanted to convey that it is actually a joyful thing to be a Black woman, and essentially set that tone that although we were going to examine and dissect how we have been presented and how the world has tried to craft our the perceptions about us, I wanted to start off and say, no, but this is us. This is how we see ourselves. So for me, it wasn't even a difficult thing to choose that moment to start the film. I just felt natural.
I want to say that, in my personal experience being a Black woman, of course, a lot of the content was extremely relatable. I love that interwoven through everyone's experience, you had a lot of history that, discussed where some of the stereotypes or the aggression or the violence, where they were rooted in. Actually, you know what? I'm going to start. Is this movie for Black women or is this movie for white people?
It's a great question. Okay, so here's the thing. When I started making the film, a bunch of people said, well, Black women, us sisters, we get together. And this is the stuff we talk about all the time. Like we live it, right? And so there was a sense of, okay, well, this has already been done. We talk about this. There's nothing new to convey. Maybe that was sort of like a part of the thing that was presented to me in some conversations. And I feel, I felt very strongly that I wanted to make a film that Black women could understand, relate, see themselves, and also give them the stuff behind the narrative of what they were taught or what they feel or what they know. But on the flip side, I feel like a big part of the problem is that people don't see us. And so I wanted it to be also for the people who didn't see us so that they could understand what they were doing, how their lack of awareness, their lack of understanding, their lack of kindness, their lack of investment in us was damaging. So I wanted to, I definitely had an idea that white folks needed, like I wanted them to understand who we are and see our beauty the way we see our. I wanted them to understand how we saw ourselves. So yeah. I guess it's dual.
I think the section about the Monet painting and the woman, the Black woman who was the servant, and what is it? Is it the Olivia? That was so telling.
You know what's so interesting? So that painting is called Olympia, right? Yeah. And I call it Olympia's Maid. And so here's the thing. I thought Olympia and Olympia's Maid is so exemplified the way in which Black and white women have been depicted historically. And so Olympia, of course, was a prostitute in actual fact. and she was actually quite comfortable in her skin. And the thing is, and like you see, half of the painting is Olympia's maid. And the fact that she was never recognized, she was never talked about, it was never a conversation who she was, like art historian, who she was, what's her story. There was no interest in someone who occupied half of the frame. Why I laughed though was my broadcaster, who is a white lady. They felt like that was not an important thing. Like, cut it. Do we need it? Like that was one of the notes, one of the first notes. Cut that out. You're trying to tighten. That was something that they felt like was unnecessary, and I felt it was incredibly necessary. And I even found through my my researcher, one of the images is someone at a gallery looking at the painting. And if you actually look at, this is very subtle, but if you look at that gallery shot, the lady, it's a white lady, is literally turned looking only at Olympia. So, I wanted, I really wanted to express some of the things that I believe are important to our experiences. I wanted to express it with art. I love art, and I felt like I wanted to use that where I could. I mean, I got art behind me, I got art all around me. I mean, if they were only real, I'd be rich, but no. But I thought it was really important to keep that in the film. And I'm so glad that it was something you connected with.
So I think I'm going off the beaten path of like the Q&A I have prepared. And I think that shows how present I am for this conversation, because it fits so closely with my experience. And of course, like you said, like when Black folks talk to each other, we have these discussions that unfortunately like white people aren't privy to, because like, just like in the scene where there's a talk show where, the conversation between the Black writer and the white writer quickly becomes about the white woman feeling attacked. And it's like, see, this is why we can't talk around you all. Like, it always becomes very challenging, which leads us to temper our words or temper our anger. And I'm thinking about what you said about the broadcaster, which, you just shared with me. Were there other ways in which you felt like you needed to adjust, not necessarily your message, but how you shared your message to make it more palpable or make it more easily understood for white audiences? Do you have any other examples of that?
Well, here's the thing. So in that case, I did not cut it. So that's number one. Another thing that was done, the thesis of the film is that our beauty is being appropriated now, but the values placed on our beauty is actually even ascribed to white women. So that I was told that would be the way to start the film, to make the film not a Black feminist film. I kid you not. I was told the film was in danger of being a Black feminist film. And I was like, I kid you not. And I was like, oh, really? Okay. So I'm like, I'm not doing that. So I was just like very clear, because I know who I'm making this film for. Right. And so I, though, instead, what I did, of course, I Soraya in there. And then what I put, I found, we've been seeing this quote for quite a long time now. And this is the Malcolm X quote. But I dug deep and I found that because I did not want to do this thing that would be more pop culture off the top. You know what I mean? I really wanted to be very clear from the very beginning that this is really important stuff. Pay attention, okay? This is not just a bubblegum pop doc, but we as Black women, our beauty, how we're treating the power that society has tried to take away from us by denying our beauty. I wanted to establish that off the top. So as you can see, it remained, the appropriation stuff does come at the end, and I think it ramps up nicely. But if I wasn't stronger, and if I wasn't clear about what this film was, I would have probably felt the need to, to make that change. So yeah, that was another thing, actually.
Right. Yeah. So I think what's really, difficult for Black people and Black women specifically is, when we're talking about the racism that we experience, white people will sometimes think about those as like the nuances, or they'll talk about overt and covert racism, still framing the prejudice and the racism from how they are, how they're seeing it. Like for me, there's no such thing as overt or covert. Like it's all violent. You know what I mean? Yeah. I lose sleep over all of it. I lose, job opportunities, or like financial stability, or like my relationships, my stress level, my blood pressure, all of the above things. There's no such thing as overt or covert. But when you, white people can understand, if they want to, that something is racist. So that's the first thing you have to explain. This thing that's happening is racist. Then they have to see how it affects us. And then if they're really still with you, if they haven't left the conversation by that time out of anger or frustration or feeling victimized, then you have the opportunity to explain how there is historic context. So it's not just situational. It's like what is happening now has, 400, 500 years of history behind it. You did a lot of research in this film to help to explain that, because we can't just say this is racist and have that be fully understood. Can you talk a little bit about the research that went into this project?
Okay, so thank you again for recognizing the depth and breadth of research that I did. I spent a year and a half just reading stuff. I mean, and again, these are conversations we have, but I felt like I needed to really present history. Here's the thing, context. I feel like context has been missing from the conversation about us. And when a number of films had been done previously, primarily by Black men, there was no historical context. So I wanted to go back to the source. I wanted to go back to where these narratives that are so damaging to us began, right? So, of course, we've all heard, especially in the Black community, if you're Black, Mammy Jezebel Sapphire, angry Black woman. These are stereotypes that we are aware of, that we see, that we live with, and the media just loves to churn it out over and over again. But I didn't want to just have a conversation and say these stereotypes existed and they're racist and that they are damaging and that they actually have a purpose, and that purpose is to diminish us and to take our power away. I couldn't just say that. I wanted to show that they started at a place. They all began somewhere. And when you look at where they began and how they began and why they began, you really start to see the active nature of these stereotypes. So coming out of slavery, the mammy, heavy-set Black woman, unattractive, unappealing. These white men were raping her asses like on a daily, okay? All right? And so, but then you show this image of this, older Black woman, who, by the way, they were raping just as much. And then it's like, well, why would a white man want to have this woman, when they could have Scarlett, and the reality is that is a made up thing. And it was, again, made up to make slavery feel like, and the treatment of Black women who were actually majority in the fields. It was meant to make us feel like this, we were like, we're just like these caretakers, and we live to serve, and we love it, and we're in alliance with you in our servitude. One of the things that I didn't put in the film because I didn't have the space was white women at one point, they actually had a bill that would pass at one level to create a mammy monument that would actually sit in the mall where Martin Luther King sits. It was around that area that there was going to be a mammy monument. Okay, and all of these white women across all of this, these social groups had come together, and it actually had passed at one level of the house. I mean, this is how crazy things are. They have no concern about Black women, and yet the thing you want to honor us about is a mammy monument. So I wanted to really identify that these stereotypes came out of a place, that there was an agenda when they were created. Same thing. The Jezebel. It's like these sexy Black women. They're wild for the sex. It's not rape. These men, they have no choice because these women are after them. They're like, they're completely sexualized. They can't get enough of it. And if you look at that little clip from Anchorman, I mean, she's literally growling at some old white dude. I mean, he's a star or whatever, but come on. I mean, look at, So, and this was a movie that was done in the last 10 years. So these stereotypes are still here. And and what the unfortunate, and of course, I did mention the Sapphire, the angry Black woman, literally to stop us in our tracks. We are angry. We are the cause of these problems in our communities. Our men don't want us. We are unappealing because of this anger. And all that is meant to do is to stop us from speaking out because, of course, we are women. We want to be loved. We want to be valued, right? And saying you are angry and mean and, unlovable, all of these things, if you're going to be standing up and trying to make change, you throw that at a Black woman and you can't help but feel like, there's something wrong with you, that you're the problem. So anyhow, you had to look at the history to really understand the context of all of these narratives that literally have left us unprotected in this society.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we're going to go a little bit over time. If you just have a few more minutes, I do want to get to the rest of my questions. What was telling for me is, again, like I said, seeing my own experiences reflected, but just going back to the research, the professors, the experts that you had talking about the history. And then also the moments where they weren't just experts in their field because of what they've studied, they were also able to talk about their own experience and share examples of what, some things they've been through as professionals, and having to deal with these issues rooted in white supremacy. I felt like that was really, really important. The expert that said, I didn't write down her name, but that she was used in promo for an event. And everybody else, the white people were all smiling and looked happy. And then she was the one who had her arm crossed and was like, and like the idea that she said, the marketing folks who put that together probably didn't realize that's what they were doing, but that's how ingrained it is. And then, so it's that. So you're dealing with internalizing that someone is viewing you that way again, probably, knowing that there wasn't enough thought or care to be put behind, honoring our intelligence and, what we bring to the table to be like, let's make sure that we actually take a good look at how we're presenting this person. And then the third part is When you then complain and say, hey, you've done this thing, I would love for you to change it, what happens next? You're the difficult one.
You're difficult, you're angry, you're unmanageable. Oh, yeah.
You're confrontational, you're hard to work with.
Yep. Yep. Listen, that's Dr. Cheryl Thompson. And here's the thing that's so diabolical. They asked her to do a photo like that. They were taking the photo and they asked her to do one with her arms crossed. So, and so you have to, it's like, you know, I've noticed it. Of course, we've all noticed it in media, you know, it's like you have a show and it's, let's say it's multi-women, right? When there's a Black woman, and again, this is, you know, she's often the heavy-set one. Now, again, I mean, I'm heavy-set. I'm completely comfortable in my size, all this kind of stuff. But when you're presenting beautiful examples of womanhood, right? We got all kinds of beautiful examples of womanhood. Why is it that you want to, when you're, you know, when you're talking about a certain kind of Black woman, she's always this way? These things are really, really troubling. You know, the fact that, you know, there, you know, and I feel like people discovered racism in some ways with the murder of George Floyd. We all, you know, we've all seen this happen. We've all seen it unfold. And now you're seeing more and more Black folks, actors in front of the camera. Not crazy much, but a little bit more. And here's the thing, you know, it's like when they think about a beautiful young woman, it's the Zendaya type now, right? These are all terrible stereotypes. I love Zendaya. I love her. Beyonce is one of my favorite people. I got to tell you, maybe people don't like her. I love her. She's like, I'm a part, my girls, we, you know, Rihanna, like, you know, Lupita, these, I mean, I love the beauty we bring to the table and the power we bring to the table. But we have got to stop these narratives that these folks, that's based out of racism and white supremacy have created, and that in some ways, to be honest, we ourselves have not fought enough against. So that's the other point of the film. It is to actually have conversations to say, how am I continuing these narratives that are actually harmful? We think about Black men and the prison industrial complex. And obviously it is something that is so diabolical and so detrimental in our communities. And, you know, and Black women are in those prisons, by the way, too. But we never think about what harms Black women. And I wanted this film to look at what harms Black women, because here's the thing. I don't think you have to look a certain way to be beautiful, by the way, right? I think we have a range of beauty, and it's about having all of that be accepted and celebrated, because the problem is for women, beauty is often one element and a big element of our power, of the power that this world gives us, right? You know, and if you're outside of that, that means that you hold less power. And so for me, this is that's a part of the message that I try to express, that it's not benign, that power is at stake here. And that lack of power leads to vulnerability, because what it means is that a white girl gets killed and everybody is searching and everybody cares. A Black girl gets killed and 20 years, 30 years go by and no one noticed, like the 100 or so Black women that have been murdered and so forth. So it's actually an important thing to recognize that there is a power behind beauty, and we need to claim that, and we need to have society to destroy these stereotypes so that our power and our beauty is actually actualized.
Oh man, as you're speaking, I'm just like thinking about, you know, when folks say, when white people when you're able to confront white people about the harm that they do or that we face, and they stop listening because, you know, you're not being soft enough or nice enough, or you have to talk to me in a certain way for me to hear this. And then to hear you speak about like we're being killed out here. Women are being killed. Black trans women are being killed. But you want us to present this in a way that like feels good to you, but we're dying, right? Thank you for making that connection. Tell us about the choice to include Rachel Dolezal in the documentary.
Yeah, that always comes up. Okay, so
Yes.
I know, you know, it's
Sorry.
like, it's all good. It's all good. And I understand. I mean, I knew that she would be controversial, but I did not include her to be controversial. I included her because for me, growing up, look, I'm a dark-skinned Black woman who, you know, have been this way my whole life. I'm actually quite comfortable in my skin, but I know that society has a box for me, right? And so when I looked at Rachel Dolezal, she was the first time I saw a white woman who coveted what we have to such an extent that she chose to live as a Black woman for a decade. And here's the thing. Now, a privileged Black woman, because being the color that she is, white, and, you know, the most she could pass that is a very high yellow, very light-skinned Black woman. And we all know that there is a hierarchy, a colorism hierarchy. So she was living life in the, I guess, a more higher caste amongst the Black community. But still, I just thought, how could we not talk about and include someone who wanted what we have when what we have has been the thing that's been disrespected? It's been the thing that's been diminished, right? And so I just thought that, because remember, I'm talking about the power of beauty and I'm talking about Black women's beauty. And let's face it, right? Black women, female beauty is often, if you look at all the different cultural groups or racial groups, racialized groups, we are the most extreme different from white, right? You know, and so that actually means that to want what we have when you actually are the standard, it needed to be looked at. You know, here's another thing. There's a woman named Martina Big, I believe her last name, and she has been taking melanin. She's gone from a blonde, green-eyed Black white woman, German, to a woman of my complexion. She's been taking melanin injections for the last, 3 or 4 years. She has these giant breasts. Her eyes have turned brown. She was talking about getting butt implants now. She said, I like this black. I like this black. I want to stay Black. It's crazy. I chose not to put her in the film. I chose because I did communicate with her and I made a decision not to put her in the film because I felt like she was just an anomaly that is so extreme that it wasn't really relevant. I think Rachel Dolezal is relevant in the conversation because there are more and more, as our beauty, our features, things about us, as more and more people are coveting that, Rachel Dolezal, to me, is a conversation that needs to happen amongst us in the context of this. That's why. I mean, I don't know if I said it eloquently enough, but I just felt like you could not look at Black female beauty juxtaposed against white female beauty and not look at the white woman who wants to be Black.
Yeah, no, I think it's not only is it extremely eloquent, everything you're saying makes a lot of sense. It's perfect. I could talk to you forever. I feel like when I get into these spaces, I'm always so grateful. You've brought yourself into this conversation. We both brought ourselves into this conversation. One last thing I want to just mention is earlier you told us that you have 3 daughters. Can you just to close off, share with us a little bit the importance of this film in your relationship?
Yeah. Well, again, with the excellent questions. So I have 3 daughters, and they actually inspired me to make this film. When I started the film, I think one was 15, one was 14, and the other was like 11 or 12, but teenagers. And how it came about was one of them went to a girls' school, and she was like one of a very few 6 or 7 Black kids in that school. And she had some white friends, and they were over, and they were talking about how she thought her lips were so beautiful and her booty was so, whatever. So like neat and whatever, pow. And I was just like shocked. I'm listening to these white girls talking about this. And my girl is like, they're my complexion. And I was just like, wow, this is a trip. Because back in the day, my lips were big and ugly. My booty was a bubble butt. You know what I'm saying? Nothing good. And so I was like, what is going on? And so I started asking my girls about how they felt. And in my mind, my girls are beautiful. 2 of them are in the film. They're the sisters who are, you can tell if you watch the film, they're the 2 sisters in there. And I discovered that they were feeling some of the same things I did when I was a teenager, which is heartbreaking, that they didn't fit. When they were younger, they did not like themselves. They wanted to have straight hair at one point, all of these things that I went through when I was a teenager. And then thank God, when I got to university, I discovered stories and narratives about actual Black people, our history. And I dismissed all of that stuff, but I couldn't believe in this day and age, they were going through these same things. So that was why I made the film. I want, I hope, first and foremost, young Black people watching this film will come out of it feeling so, I hope, empowered to be themselves, to see their beauty and to understand that it is not their imagination. There's a whole host of narratives out there designed to diminish them. And it's not their imagination, that it isn't real. That racism, that white supremacy, that gaze is actually real, and it's meant to harm them on some level. So I want young women to understand that. And then I had an older woman, by the way, who said to me, her whole life, she had never felt comfortable in her skin. And in seeing the film, she understood why. So I know that I made this for my daughters and for young people, but I also think that some of us Black women, we're not there. We haven't been there. We haven't gotten there. And so in making the film for my daughters, I think I've also hopefully made it for all of us, to really know that you have a voice and use it, and that even though that the world has tried to diminish our power and beauty, we are not passive. There is knowing is half the battle. This is like G.I. Joe when I was a kid. G.I. Joe, knowing is half the battle. And I hope that film puts the knowing into the world.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jen, for this extremely important film. I know I'm going to do my best to get it in front of the audiences here, the young women in the Bay Area who need to see this and will, without a doubt, get that sense of empowerment from what you have put your effort and passion into. It's so important. And thank you for being here today with us as well.
Thank you, Shakira. It was great to talk with you. And yeah, man, I hope you all love the film. Send me, I'm on Insta, send me something, you know, let me know what you think.
Will do. Appreciate your time. And thank you all for joining us for the Q&A. Enjoy the rest of the Mill Valley Film Festival.